we like, it's not something that harms us. We can have those thyroid lumps. They're very slow growing. Sometimes they're cancerous, sometimes they're not. Mine, they thought, had grown 2 centimeters in 6 months, which is like unheard of. They didn't understand what was going on, why it would grow so quickly. Prior to that, I'd had a couple of different, like over a year, it was just staying the same size. And then all of a sudden they thought it had grown. It didn't. They think it might have been a typo because he pulled out a 2.4 centimeter lump when he pulled out the thyroid. And they thought it had grown to 4.2 centimeters. So I had half of my thyroid removed on a typo. And then the fun for me that followed was that I was an anomaly in that once my thyroid was removed, most people I spoke to, even having had their full thyroid removed, they came back to full energy within about a year. Not for me though. It took years, and I'm still not back to full energy. I had my thyroid out in 2014. So it's been a long time. It's been 8 years. And I still haven't come back to the energy I've had. And I got zero help from, we'll say, Western medicine. They just, as far as they were concerned, my numbers were fine. My thyroid numbers were fine. Everything was fine. And yet I was exhausted. And it's, unless you, the only other people who understand when I say exhausted are people who have thyroid problems. Because it is a tired that, like I used to say to people when they'd say I'm tired, I'd say, well, have a nap. You can't have a nap for this. You can have a nap. You'll wake up feeling exactly the same way you did when you went to sleep. So the tired, when I say tired, I had someone describe it to me, and when I gave a presentation once, and she called it cellular tired, because you are tired in your bones and you just can't move. There's no energy to get and go anywhere. So I was attempting to start this business, and I was working for a friend 3 days a week, and the idea of working my business the last 2 days of the week, and I couldn't. Once I worked 3 days, that was the end for me. So it was so when I say tired, it's not what you think. It is very much, it is a full cellular tired, hard to move. And I was a person who used to do P90X, CrossFit, downhill skiing, snowboarding, but all of those things. And now I really can't do them for very long. If I go cross country ski, like I used to do like 10 kilometers, now I do 2. And recently I tried to do too much because we got a nice long winter here. Our winter lasted a little long, and I was like, I'm going to get out 3 times a week. And that was too much for me. The 3rd time in the week just knocks me down.
So how have you managed that fatigue? Because, obviously you've been able to adapt in some ways, and it seems like you've been able to increase your energy levels to a certain extent. How have you been able to do that? What's helped you with that?
So initially I really struggled. Like I said, as far as medical was concerned, I was completely healthy. There was nothing wrong with me. And then my boyfriend and his 2 kids moved in, and I just became this awful person. One of the things my doctor said to me, which I was pretty upset with her about, because I'm female, anyone else in the room can make a guess as to what they said to me when I was tired. They thought I was depressed. And so I had just seen the doctor the first time I saw her. So I gave her the benefit of the doubt. And I said, you know what? I won't take medication for depression. So what would we do for that? And she said, cognitive behavioral therapy. I said, well, I'm a life coach. When I'm tired and sitting on the couch, I'm literally repeating to myself, it's okay. Your life is good. You're just tired. And she went, oh. Oh, so it took a really long time, but I started going to people like I met at Your Holistic Earth. So I started seeing a naturopath. And after a while, when my boyfriend and his kids were here, I did get to the point where I now was depressed. It was just all too much. The stress of having them move in, plus trying to run a business and everything else. I think I got to a point where I was depressed, but depression doesn't look like tired for me. It looks angry. That's just the way it shows up for me. So I finally went, okay, I got to the point where I literally thought in my head, I just don't even want to live anymore. this is too hard. And that's when I realized, okay, we just don't even think that. That's not even a thought that ever should run through your head. So I actually went to a medical intuitive. That's who I went to first. She suggested I do a cleanse because by this point I was full of candida. So that was one of the issues, because now like my body, I had body pains everywhere, and there was lots of new symptoms on top of tired, because when you're tired you go for sugar and carbs, right? And so I was trying to get the energy back by eating sugar and carbs and creating candida overgrowth. So I started with her. She suggested a cleanse, which made a huge difference. There was a point too, they did put me on Synthroid for a little bit. It wasn't good for me to be on Synthroid, but it was like it helped my thyroid to kick back in. So I used it for a couple of months, and then it made me a bit crazy, so I came off of it. But it seemed to at that point have kind of kicked me, somehow just reminded my body that it was supposed to do that. Then after seeing the medical intuitive, I started getting a lot more help. My doctor even finally heard me when I said, like, I'm really tired, and she actually started sending me to specialists to see what was going on. There's still no, as far as medical, like Western medicine is concerned, I am completely healthy. I still can't do, like, I can walk the dog and do 10 minutes of exercise. If I do any more than that, I'm going to exhaust myself for the week. So I still have to balance that. And so to get back to your question, that's exactly what I have to do, is I have to pay attention every day to what kind of energy I have. And I have to know how far I can push myself, basically. So I'm actually in a point now where I'm slipping a little bit right now. Easter was exciting and I ate too much chocolate. I have to be very careful how much sugar I eat. And as I mentioned, I was trying to ski 3 times a week, and I just kind of exhausted myself. I was trying to get those last few in while the snow was still good here. So I'm on a bit of a slide right now, but working on coming back.
I love it. And I love that you talked about a couple of things, one, that depression can look different for everybody, which, I love that statement because it's very true. Also, the idea of a medical intuitive, and from what I understand, that you've kind of learned to use intuition in your own life and possibly with your client. How do you use intuition now on kind of like, how do you incorporate it into your daily life?
Well, so I've been meditating for quite a while, and that's one of the things that's really helpful as far as getting in touch with your intuition. But I had a big lesson in this. When they told me I should have the surgery, I had a panic attack. And I knew I shouldn't have the surgery, but my mom is a nurse. And so I just talked myself out of it. It's okay, Lisa, he's a really good doctor. And he is. The doctor who did the surgery is a wonderful man. He looked sick when he had to tell me what they had done. He just felt terrible. And he continued to follow me up until through COVID, when he had to he was down to 70% of his patient load. So he said to me, look, it's been 8 years now. Nothing's going on. If there's a problem, you come back to me, though. But he followed me for 8 years to make sure that no one made another mistake. So he's a very wonderful man. So that's what I told myself. Well, no, he's a really good doctor. Just leave it, go. I even got a second opinion. And in that second opinion, I didn't give the guy my ultrasounds. So there was times when my brain kept saying, do this, and I just didn't follow it. And so now I've worked a lot on when I get that real strong pull to just go and do it. When I hear that little voice, to do what it's saying to do. And when I hear the sort of negative voice, I realize that that's not true. If it's a negative voice, it's not your intuition.
Right. And so is there a tip or tool, and maybe that's it, that you can share with our audience to help them kind of develop and use their intuition on a more regular basis? What would you suggest?
So for me, it's really about getting still and paying attention to what's going on in your life right now. And it's always the couple of things I always do is never make a decision when I'm angry. Actually, there's a great line from, I think it's actually an AA saying, AA or NA, I'm not sure which one, but HALT. And I like to add an S. So HALTS. Hungry, angry, lonely, tired, or stressed. Do not make a decision in those moments, because the thoughts in your head in those moments are not necessarily the correct thoughts. Some of it might be your anger or things like when you're angry, sometimes I listen just because I now know what I'm angry about. But I don't act on that. I don't act on the action points in those. So those, I think that's the biggest thing for me. My intuition always speaks in the positive.
That's a great tip. That's a great tip. If it's negative Nelly, it's not your intuition. That's your ego getting in the way. I love it. That's such a great tool to use. So we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about, kind of what you do and in terms of leadership and helping leaders. So my question to you is, what does an ideal workplace look like to you? What is that culture? What does it feel like? What is that ideal workplace culture?
So I think it's a feeling more than anything. I think if you're walking in and you're afraid to say what you're thinking or to speak, then that's not a healthy workplace. As a leader, we want people who are going to give us their opinions, because the more opinions we have, the better decisions we will make. You always want to have people on your team who come from, I always use personality assessments. I know they're not perfect, but they give you a really good idea. A lot of companies I've worked for, when we bring in the personality assessments, and a lot of them are on like a circle, everybody's in one side. You're not making good decisions. I promise you, you are not making good decisions if everyone is in the same personality. You want a gambit of them. And so you want, and then you have to work through to communicate in different ways with different people. So you really want to have that team that is willing to speak up, that are comfortable in giving their opinion. And that just, it really is how it feels walking in. I've worked in some negative places and you can literally feel the darkness as you walk in the door. So in order to build that, for me, it's about treating people. I was in human resources before. So I always said, like, we know that the people that work for us are a resource, but we treat them like human beings. And I know that everybody's changing the name of that now. They have all these different names for human resources. I like human resources because they're human beings. The word is in there. Please treat them like human beings. Yeah. So I think that's the biggest thing, is creating a culture and being really clear on what the values are. So I love how Your Holistic Earth always talks about heart-centered businesses. And I work a lot with heart-centered businesses. So lots of, businesses like Your Holistic Earth or counseling places, things like that. So all people that are serving others.
Right. And so along with that workplace culture, and that feeling, what does an effective leader look like? What does a good leader look like? And how can we create more of them?
So I haven't done this in my marketing as much yet, but I think there are what I call dual paths to leadership. And so a good leader knows how to take care of themselves, because how you show up to your team is going to make a difference on how the team shows up. And so if you show up and you're having a bad day and you say, you know what, I'm having a really rough day. Can you ask me this question tomorrow? Can what you're saying wait till tomorrow? I don't think I'm going to respond as well. That gives people then permission to do the same, right? I'm having a rough day. So showing up in the way that you want them to, and letting people be human beings, because life happens. Life's going to happen. And I hope that people learned this through COVID, that life happened for everybody all at once, and we needed to pull on as much empathy as we could have. Now, there's a line in leadership when I say that, because I have some really heart-centered people here going, great, I'm so good at that. But there is a line where you need to be compassionate, but you also need to keep the goals of the company in your thoughts. So if someone really isn't meeting, like if they really don't match with your values, or they're really just not getting the job done, it is your responsibility as the leader to say, you know what, as much as I care about you, I need you to get this done. So what do you need from us to get it done? And if they're in a constant state of not getting it done, then it is your role as the leader to say, this is what I need from you. If you're not getting it from me eventually, thank you. Maybe there's someplace that you fit better than here.
Right.
And that's not necessarily a negative thing. I know when I say that kind of thing, people are like, Lisa, you're going to fire. Yes. My experience has always been that if someone really isn't thriving in your company, it is better to let them go and find a company where they will thrive. It's so important. I lived an experience where I was at the wrong company. My values were so different than theirs, and it took its toll. When I first started this business, I refused to do anything leadership, and it's what I love. So it took like 6 years to get back into leadership because that one place.
Right.
Yeah.
So along the same lines, I'm going to shift gears a little bit and see how you can answer this question. So you talked about being an effective leader, of course, in the workplace and what that looks like. I think it's also important to be an effective leader in our own lives. What does that look like for you, leading your own life in a very effective and maybe heart-centered way?
All right. So that's a great question, because when I was going through this struggle, part of what I realized is I became a really nasty person. And I definitely was not a good leader. I was not even a very nice person. People that are around me or know me absolutely never believe this, but if you ask my stepkids, they'll let you know. I really got to a point, like I said, for me, the depression looked like anger. And so I was constantly frustrated with them, and so that was a moment of really effectively failing in not only leading myself, but my team at the time was my kids, right? I had 2 stepkids. So it was really a failure in that. So that's why I think it's so important, the idea of the dual paths, because you really need to know where you're at and what you need before you're stepping out and trying to lead someone. And no matter, like, if you have the word parent in the title, so step parent, grandparent, actually aunt, uncle, all of those things, you're a leader. So you need to show up in the best possible you that you can. So I think for me, that was the biggest piece, is realizing, okay, I already knew this stuff. I took a course called Dual Passive Leadership years ago, and that's what he talked about, was really leading yourself first. And that was when I had to do that step out, was just hearing how far I'd gotten to have the thought, like, I wanted to die. I didn't want to keep going. That is definitely not a space to be leading from. And that was the kind of the kick and the realization that I have to do something. And the kick to go see, the initial thing was to go see the intuitive. And it made a big difference. And then I've just continued to get help since. Like, it just keeps showing up. So the one moment, like I say to everyone, you take one step towards yourself, and then the universe will just send a flood for you. Right. So yeah, I think that is the main thing. And I think I've moved from working in large corporations to working one-on-one. I really like to work one-on-one with people, because I don't think you're as, like, you can do what you can working with the big, large corporations, but everyone has to work on themselves. And that's your number one thing as far as stepping into that leader role. Once you've worked on yourself, now you're showing up in the best way possible, and you're in a headspace where you can go, okay, these are the company values. These are my values. This is how I'm going to show up every day.
Right. Yeah. I love all of that information. And I'm going to ask one more question of Lisa. So if you guys have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. So I just want to go back to a couple of things you said. I love the piece about, whether you're a parent, a grandparent, an aunt, and uncle, you're a leader. And I think that we do need to recognize that whether we're none of those things, we're probably still a leader in some capacity. Mm-hmm. The other thing I really want to kind of bring back is this idea of how your wellness journey continues. And so, you continue to get support along the way. What does that kind of look like? Give us a little bit more detail about what that looks like, and why is that important? Why can't you just take all of the tools that you have and implement them? Why do you need to keep traveling on this journey?
Because life doesn't stop. Life doesn't stop. And a new thing, there's some pretty basics for me that I know. Easter came around, I ate too many chocolates. I know what I did to myself. And it's not like before, where now I need to go for a run and get rid of the weight. That's not what this is. I'm now in an ugly sugar, we'll just call it ugly sugar tornado, maybe. I don't know what the right thing is, because now I'm craving the sugar and I'm having trouble not eating it. And, so there's some things I know I've done it to myself, but life changes, things happen, and you can't always, we can't always control everything. So for me, it's now always about finding the balance, because I really like Easter chocolate. I'm not going to ever not eat the Easter chocolate. That is the reality. And so trying to do things in a way that works better for me. So I've been following someone who talks about sugar now, and where if you're going to have the chocolate, have it right after a meal, because it won't spike your insulin. You won't have the crash as much. So, and just continuing to learn. So now I know, okay, great. Because before I was like, nope, no sugar. I'm just going to cut it all out. That's not realistic. It's not realistic. I want to eat cake sometimes, right? So just to keep learning, because life happens. And then, recognizing my stressors and how to deal with them and getting the support. And for me, it's health, but it's also things that cause us stress. So I was talking to someone today about money and how to handle money differently, because running a small business is very different than having a regular paycheck. So I need to learn something new about that. And that ends up in health, because when we're not paying attention to something like money, there's a little thing in the back of our head in a constant state of like, are you going to have enough money for that? Are you going to have money for that? Like, it's just a constant stress, and it's going to take its toll. So life's going to happen. You just have to keep learning. I think that, people get put in front of you for a reason. And I think your Holistic Earth got put in front of me for a reason. As much as I continue to get support, I am, my goal is to support everyone else, because I really think that these businesses need to be out there and in people's faces, because there's just, Western medicine is still needed. I don't want to, I haven't had a great experience, I'll say, but it's still needed. There are drugs that are needed, and people need them. And if that's your reality, then you need that support constantly too. But there is a whole other side that can be helping you as well. I'm like, the first thing I was thinking of was like a mental health medication. You know what, if you need the meds, take the meds, and then also come and see some of the holistic people who can help you with, okay, these meds are going to harm your stomach and they're going to do these things. So here's how we support that, and bring the two together. And I'm hopeful that one day we will see that in our world, that we'll see, all of our holistic practitioners. And we are in some cases. I know that there's Reiki in a few hospitals in the US. So.
Absolutely. And I mean, really, you just, epitomize what your Holistic Earth is about, is this understanding that your wellness journey is not meant to be traveled alone. And what that looks like is all kinds of different things. And our goal is to support each and every one of our members on that journey. So thank you so much for sharing that. I see a couple of questions in the chat. So the first one, what was the name of the leadership course that you took, as well as the name of Medical Intuitive?
So the Medical Intuitive, I can, so if you can connect with me after, I'll connect you with her through Facebook. She doesn't do a lot of advertising or anything. So, and the name is not coming to me at the moment. So this is one of the other things that comes with being tired is brain fog. It will come to me, and if I think of it, or I'll go on Facebook and try and find her, I'll give it to you. But if not, make sure you connect with me after, and I'll connect you to her. And the leadership course that I took, or that I give.
I think he's talking, or this, sorry, Zoe is talking about the dual,
the dual paths of leadership. Yeah. Yes. Okay. So that was years ago. It was with a company called Magna, and they brought a gentleman in. It was a very bizarre course to take in a company like that. So I took 6 months of training with them, and this was just one of the courses I took through that 6 months. And I've been trying to contact the gentleman. I still have you can see all the binders are still behind me. I've been trying to contact him because I eventually want to write a book called that, but I don't want to kind of steal his thunder. So I've been trying to connect with him through LinkedIn, and I haven't connected with him. So I don't know that it's still out there, unfortunately, but the course was called Dual Paths of Leadership. It was kind of my first foray into, I'll say, alternative things, because we watched Tuesdays with Maury. That was one of the things we did. So
Great.
it was a very bizarre thing to be watching Tuesdays with Maury in a very corporate setting.
Right.
So they're pretty, yeah.
There was another question, but I think our wonderful group has already answered it. So it was about the acronym. So we
Yes.
are kind of running out of time, but Lisa, I believe you have something happening that you wanted to share with the group.
I do. So if there are any entrepreneurs in the group, I just started working with entrepreneurs, and it was actually brought on by working with Your Holistic Earth. I'm doing a free webinar tomorrow about hiring your first consultant, employee, whatever. I'm taking my HR knowledge and bringing it to what I'll call the solopreneur. The reason for that is, again, I'm feeling very passionate about, I've received so much support from people like Your Holistic Earth, people, businesses that I want to give back. And the best way I can see to do that is to get you the help you need to grow your business so that you can be doing what you're meant to be doing and someone else can be doing the background stuff. So I'll put the link to it. It's tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern. So noon for
noon Mountain
for most of you. Yeah.
Wonderful. If you could drop that in the chat. Lisa, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing your journey with us, your insight, your wisdom. We appreciate you, and thank you.